Hayden Panettiere is gone. She was 36 years old, and the final hours before her death are raising more questions than answers. It was not a quiet passing. It was not a peaceful one. It was not the ending anyone who watched her grow up on screen could have imagined. Fans who loved her since Remember the Titans. Fans who cheered for her in Heroes. Fans who followed her for years through Nashville. And everything after, they are all asking the same thing tonight. What actually happened inside that home in Greenville, South Carolina? Because the more details come out, the stranger this story gets. Let's start with what we know for certain. The coroner's office in Greenville County confirms Hayden's body has been released and transferred to a mortuary chosen by her family. No word yet on funeral arrangements, but the investigation. Officials say it remains active, ongoing, not closed. That word alone should tell you something. Police were seen outside the family home of her boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, at 11 minutes past 10 in the morning. Nobody was home. The officers left. That property sits about 5 miles from the location where Hayden was found unresponsive, just before 2 in the afternoon on a Sunday. Cardiac arrest. Possible overdose, CPR in progress. That was the scene first responders walked into. Now here's where it gets even more unsettling. Sources close to the situation say Hayden was found unresponsive by Zach Hickerson. That's Brian's brother. The same Brian who has been her on-again, off-again boyfriend for years. Zach was reportedly asleep in another bedroom when it happened. Think about that for a second. The person who found her was not her partner. It was his brother, and her partner was somewhere else entirely. It gets darker. Investigators say Hayden appeared to have passed away sitting upright in a chair in the living room. And if that detail feels eerily familiar, it should. Because that is almost exactly how her younger brother, Jansen, was found 3 years earlier. Jansen was only 28. An autopsy later revealed he had an undiagnosed enlarged heart, and like his sister, he had also struggled with substance abuse for years. 2 siblings. 2 chairs. 2 sudden deaths, years apart. The parallels are impossible to ignore. So now let's talk about Brian Hickerson, because his history with Hayden is not new information, and it is not clean. They got together back in 2018, and almost immediately, the warning signs started piling up. In her own memoir, Hayden described their relationship in blunt terms: 7 years defined by mental illness, addiction, rage, abuse, and pain. Her words. Not a headline, not a rumor, her own account of her own life. In 2021, Brian pleaded no contest to 2 separate felony domestic violence charges. One of those incidents involved him allegedly punching Hayden in the face. When TMZ asked him about it directly earlier this year, his answer was chilling in its own way. He said he was never taught what domestic violence even was growing up. He said maybe if somebody had explained it to him earlier, things would have gone differently. He talked about going to a dark place. Drugs, alcohol, abuse. He described it almost like a split personality, one version of him sober, and a completely different version once alcohol entered the picture. And according to him, the version people fell in love with would eventually resurface, pulling Hayden back in every single time. That cycle exploded into public view in 2022 outside a hotel in Hollywood. Brian was caught on camera getting into a violent brawl with another group of people. Hayden reportedly tried to break it up. Instead, she ended up kicked in the face and thrown to the pavement. That is not a private argument behind closed doors. That happened in front of cameras, in front of witnesses, in front of the world. And yet, the relationship kept going. Just this past March, the two were spotted together again at the airport, with Hayden using crutches for a nerve issue in her back. Brian told reporters at the time that things between them were just friendly now. Mutual respect. Nothing more. But Hayden herself once explained why she kept returning to a relationship that had already turned violent multiple times. She said she was more afraid of being alone than she was of being with someone who was physically hurting her. Read that again. That is not a small confession. That is someone describing exactly how these cycles trap people, even people with fame, money, and every resource in the world at their disposal. There is one more thread to this story, and it involves Hayden's mother, Leslie Bogle. The two were reportedly estranged for years, and part of the reason traces back to Brian. Leslie has said the family hoped Hayden would eventually put distance between herself and Brian for good. Instead, the fact that he was with her again at the time of her death lands as both unsurprising and completely devastating, according to Leslie's own words to ET. What makes it more complicated is this. Hayden revealed that even after her parents' relationship with Brian soared, her mother stayed in contact with him separately. That contact reportedly deepened the rift between mother and daughter even further. There is also Zach Hickerson himself, the brother who found her. Back in 2019, he and Hayden were photographed in Manhattan holding hands, sparking rumors of a romantic connection between them. Leslie has firmly denied that was ever the case. Zach runs his own ministry, and in a sermon from that same year, he referenced Hayden and Brian directly, joking about being caught between the two of them. So now you have three people tangled together in this story: Hayden, Brian, and Zach. One relationship defined by years of documented violence, one family fractured by loyalty and denial, and one final morning that ended with police at a house nobody answered, and a woman gone far too soon. The investigation is still open. The full cause of death has not been confirmed, and the people closest to Hayden are left with questions that may never fully be answered. What we do know is this: a young woman who survived years of public struggle, who wrote openly about abuse most people never speak about, who was already carrying the grief of losing her brother in almost identical circumstances, is now gone too. And somewhere in Greenville, South Carolina, investigators are still trying to piece together exactly what happened in her final hours.